I sat down with Stemage, the songwriter for the Avatar The Battle for Pandora Pinball Machine by Jersey Jack, and we talk about his experience with writing a pinball soundtrack and how he got here. I'd like to welcome Stemage on today. He accomplished something I've been meaning to do for the last 3 months. I have a new dream, seems like every year, and this year's dream is to score a pinball machine, and I am deadly curious to hear from him. So welcome Stemage on to the show. I don't know
The
what this
show.
is.
What's this called? What's this show called? What are we doing?
It's
This
just,
is, you know what I've been calling you in my head for the last week?
what's that?
Mr. Maneuver. So this can be Mr. Maneuver's
Show?
talk time
Oh, talk time?
show.
Okay, that's way
Yeah, I don't
better.
know.
That's why you're
It's
in the biz.
terrible. Awful. I'm firing myself.
So
It was
wait,
great. It's great to talk to you. Great to be here and hang out.
yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. Like I just looked you up on YouTube. Well, I just put Avatar soundtrack, hoping that the soundtrack of a pinball machine would be on YouTube, which is weirdly not that accessible most of the time. And luckily you posted like examples of your work on YouTube. It's like these little bits. And that
hmm
kept me going until we started talking because I just had to listen to those over and over again because I'm addicted to the soundtrack, man.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I just want you rarely see full soundtracks from pinball machines. They're isolated cases, and then for the old ones, people will rip them from the games, and throw them up. Everything from the old chip tracks from the '80s machines to some of the '90s ones that people are trying to put that stuff up because people love their pin music. But I just wanted to put up a sampler of stuff I've done. It's a bit different than the style of music people expect from me, and I wanted to show that off a little bit, so I was able to just kind of cut some pieces together just to kind of show the variety,
For what
you
you
know.
do, I imagine you are not really able to be pigeonholed into one genre. I imagine you're going to have to be pretty flexible in tackling different approaches and different styles of music.
Yeah, I mean, I have always been the rock guy. We were talking about that. I mean, I was my the first song I learned on guitar was Paradise City by Guns N' Roses back when that album came out. So like, I came from the band background, and sort of stuck with rock stuff for a long time. But when I started doing music for a living, I got forced to do things outside my comfort zone, right? And figure out, see what I could do, get into electronic stuff, get into stranger things and stranger kinds of music, not stranger things,
Yeah.
but write things that sound like stranger thing. I mean, circus music and now more sort of orchestrated symphonic stuff. And so it's really been cool to be forced to try those things because if I wasn't doing music for other projects, I probably wouldn't have been pulled in those directions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Like, so when I was in high school, believe it or not, a high schooler like me was kind of a little bit of a snob. And what I did, I wanted to break away from that snobbiness, right? Because I was like such a metal rock kid. And what I did was at the time, dubstep was really big. And for some reason, it just didn't click with me. So I said to myself, I'm going to write a dubstep song. And when I did that, I was like, "Oh, I suck at writing dubstep. Like it's not easy, but it's fun." And I
Yeah.
totally get the genre now. And when I hear it, I even see the similarities between that and heavy metal. Like there's usually a breakdown, and just like in metal, that's the part where it's on. And to me,
Yeah.
that's the most
Yeah.
exciting part of the song now. So, um, for I've now developed like this idea of I think I can like any song in I think I can like a song in any genre. I don't have to like every song, but I bet you if I try to be in their shoes that I can try to make my own version of it and find an appreciation through that.
Yes. Appreciation, I think, is a big one. I think that, I don't know, it's not hard to like anything done well if you're open-minded enough,
Mhm.
to take it in and understand it, meet it on its own terms. I'm not into all genres of music, but I appreciate anything that um seems musically sound to me, or maybe it's an absolute mess and that's what it's supposed to be. Maybe
Yeah.
it's noisy and I appreciate that too, right? But it is fun to try and mimic some of that. It all depends on, like you said, you attempted your first dubstep song, but a dubstep guy might attempt a rock track, and it probably would suck too. So, we all have where we start from, and then I think that's a lot of finding your own sound is experimenting like that, and then combining what you feel you do best with these new things, um, is kind of the sweet spot. You know what I mean? Not just trying to ape someone else entirely, because someone else is already doing that, but pull in bits of that and combine that with whatever it is you're doing, and you might end up with something pretty original that way.
Yep. I
Um,
That's definitely my favorite part is how am I going to implement this new skill or genre that I've learned to love into what I do already, even if it's not straight up doing a dubstep thing like in the middle of the song. It's maybe taking elements of it and sneak it in there, and I love to do
yeah.
that.
I think that's one of the things that ended up happening with Avatar is that I I really wanted to juice up the multi-ball music in this game. I wanted it to have some texture and some layers that people might not expect, and you probably wouldn't hear in the film. But this is our version of Pandora for this pinball machine. So I had this idea, so I kind of like pulled in a little bit of guitar. Not like this isn't like some tech metal thing, but just for texture, and then pull in a trap kit instead of like the thunder drums you hear all the time and
Right.
movie battles, and then just see how it sits. And all the music in this game we had to, and Mark the designer's fine with it because he's a metalhead. He's like, whatever, let's go to war. I wanted it to feel like going to war in multi-ball in this game. There's a point to this. And so we sent it to Disney, because everything had to be approved by Disney, and made a case for the energy level of multi-ball and what we wanted to do, and they were okay with it. So I was like, okay, well, if we have Disney's blessing, then that's it. Decision's over. And I'm sure there's going to be someone that listens to the multi-ball music in this game and thinks that's not something that would fit in the film. Like you wouldn't hear that instrumentation in the film, but it is a piece of music that certainly could exist in the film. We've just augmented it for multi-ball, and that was an example of me injecting sort of my lineage and the things I love and the things I know into this genre of music that I don't normally do. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I
Yeah.
totally see where you're coming from because how I saw Battle for Pandora is it's not Avatar 1, it's not Way of Water. It doesn't seem. It seems like some of its own story in some way. And for me, that means that you can adapt things and you can change things on its own because you're telling your own story. And with that, you're allowed to put yourself in there. And if you come from the rock world, of course you're going to add elements of that in there. And when you're playing with the multi-ball, it definitely feels like it fits. Like it's an adrenaline
Cool.
rush. The lights are going crazy.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm biased as hell because rock is just in my DNA. But I mean, I it's one of those genres where you can pretty much I mean, rock just likes to eat everything up and like become, you know, part of it if you let it. So I
Yeah.
totally see where you come. I would do the same thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you don't wanna overdo it, right?
Mhm.
It has to be something where you could take the rock parts out and the piece of music would still belong in the world, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, it was fun to do that, and it was fun to get permission. I was so nervous. I was like, I'll write what you would expect to hear in a fight sequence, because I kinda did it already. I just gotta put the other fill it out with the rest of the instruments. But the fact that they were game, made me happy. Uh, so that was definitely an example of like, Avatar was a sidestep for me genre-wise, but I was still able to put a lot of myself in it. Well, I mean, and even like the chord progressions and some of the melodic stuff. I mean, it's all stuff that I would have written for guitar. It just happens to be a different set of instruments. So
Yeah,
it was
so
fun.
so stepping out to a new genre, did you compose everything initially on guitar and then just moved it to like MIDI tracks, or was it more like did you like sheet music it out or whatever?
Yeah, great question. So I can't read music. I don't do sheets. So I'm all MIDI and guitar, and a lot of the music you hear in this game was not only written on guitar but performed with the guitar, and I have a plugin I use that can listen to my guitar and then interpolate the audio into MIDI data, so I can like have my headphones on and play a choir with my guitar, strum a big open E major and hear bah, and it's like it's the whole, you know, uh, and so some of the soundtrack was definitely hunting and pecking and playing the keyboard and putting stuff in. But the crux of a lot of it was, especially when coming up with melodic ideas, I just because I know guitar so well, it started there. So, and I've done that with a lot of game soundtracks too. Game soundtracks that have no guitar, mostly electronic things, will be written on guitar because it's home base for me. You know?
Wow. Yeah, that actually makes me feel a lot better because I can't read music really. I did it in
Yeah.
high school for trumpet and I was borderline last chair. You know what I mean? Like guitar was always my thing, bass was always my thing, especially bass. And yeah, that makes me feel better because I can't play keys
Yeah.
either. So the fact that you use the like a some sort of MIDI controller type deal with your guitar, that is really sick and very encouraging for me. So that's very
Yeah.
validating.
Years ago when I started doing music professionally, I was concerned because I can't read music. I didn't come from that background. I took class piano in college and it didn't work. I just would learn the song after, and then just play and not read anymore. I never could retrain to read music, but it turns out it's never, and it has not been a problem so far. We talked about the Steven Universe stuff earlier. All that stuff, it was all MIDI. It was either sending audio files that I would just learn by ear because been learning music by ear forever, or it was sending MIDI data. It was, I've done for a number of shows and other games and hired like guitar for hire kind of stuff, and it's never a problem. I rarely have gotten sheets. It's been like, you want the MIDI? You want isolated tracks and a MIDI? I'm like, yes, and then that's it. And then it's just learning it. And so I have not gotten to the point where I've been writing music that people need to perform themselves. Uh, Very much. I've had soloists and people perform, and most of them can hear their way through what I have put down as well. But so I haven't like haven't like written this. I haven't written chamber music and had to like make sheets for that. But I probably would get a friend to do that. I'd get a friend who um who is best at that to help me out with it, right? Instead of trying to fumble my way through it. So point being, reading music has not been a hurdle for me. So you shouldn't have to worry about that.
That that is very nice to hear because I
Yeah.
feel definitely an imposter syndrome type thing for I've always relied on my ear and
Yep.
I've never been known as like you probably do too, but you probably hung out with cats that can like read sheet music like crazy and then they can do the gig,
Oh,
right off the bat and it's intimidating because I'm somebody I'll like listen to the song, I kind of have to get to know it a little bit and then, I can do whatever, but yeah, that is incredibly validating and relieving to hear for that kind of
I'm
thing.
still way jealous. You're right. Like, wait, I play shows with a couple different bands, and there was we played a track at one of my bands played called Super Strikers. We played at this event, this video game music event back in March, and we learned this song. And I practiced it for weeks, and it's not an easy lead part on guitar because guitar is just weird. Most of this music isn't written for guitar. And then we had a guest saxophone player last minute, and he came into the hotel room, and we're just jangle practicing in there. And he read the song, he played it once. We had a couple notes about spots to drop out or take a solo or whatever. He played it one more time, and he's like, I'm good, and took off and showed up to the show and played it first try. And it's because that's what he went to school for, and he can read sheets, and it's no big deal. I'm jealous of that, but I haven't gotten where I am by doing that, right? Like I started by ear and it's led me here. And so no complaints. Am I jealous of people that can just get in a room and everyone has sheets and they can just play? Absolutely.
Wow.
Um, there's some songs I could just play. If you want to get together in a jam space and play the music of Castlevania 1, I can just do that.
Yeah.
But it's just because I know it. It's already in my head. I can't read it. But yeah, anyway, but and I'm proud actually to have been able to create this symphonic, uh, sort of uh, a bit genre bending, but appropriate music for the Avatar universe having come from a by ear background. It feels like an accomplishment for me personally, because of what the expectations that we think we are put on us, or that we put on ourselves about reading sheets, music, conservatory, all that stuff. You can be a rock and roller and write some cool music for people. Uh, you just got to work your butt off.
Well, I was
Yeah.
wondering, how did you get involved with pinball? Like, did someone
Yeah.
recommend you, or did you go out of your way like, "Hey, I wanna do a pinball machine." What's going on with that?
So I've loved pinball my whole life. Got sort of back into it
Mm.
uh, maybe about 12, 13 years ago. A friend of mine had picked up a high-speed machine from a lady that was getting rid of one, and my brother and I were going over and we were kind of working through it. And I just kind of got back into it, and then back into the hobby. And then I have owned a few machines. I've owned 3 machines. But I don't own any right now just because of moving and stuff. But and they're quite expensive at the moment, so
Yeah.
I don't own any right now. But I've always wanted to do pinball music. I love pinball music. I've even covered music from pinball machines. I did a Swords of Fury cover many years ago. Um, and so what happened with this project was that the designer Mark Seiden, who did Avatar, he was previously working on a homebrew machine, a real homebrew machine for Metroid, because he's a big Metroid fan, Nintendo series. So I found his streams on Twitch, because he was streaming building the whole game. He was streaming the coding process. He was like, bending ramps and making stuff work. And he was using placeholder music in the game. And I have a band called Metroid Metal that started back in 2003. Started with just recording covers of Metroid tracks myself, and then the band got together and we did an album in like 2009, and we played conventions. And we still play on occasion, but he saw us back in like 2012, I think, something like that. And my music was in the machine. Like he was using a loop for Metroid Metal in the machine. I was like, "Hey, let me help. Let me help you. Let me cut some loops. I'll go in and I'll cut some stuff together, some seamless loops." And so we connected, and there, and then I recommended some sound packages for sound effects, and then my wife did call outs for his Metroid homebrew. She did,
No way.
Power Bomb. She came and did that. And then he gets poached. He gets picked up by Jersey Jack Pinball. They saw what he was doing, and I was like, "Adios. Enjoy making a production machine. If you ever get back to Metroid, let me know." And he was like, "Well, if you would ever be interested in doing, would you ever be interested in doing audio for a production machine?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Of course." So fast forward like 2 years, I think.
Wow.
I got hit up by someone over at Jersey Jack, and they were like, we're doing multiple, we have multiple projects going on right now, and we could use an additional audio person." And Mark had dropped your name, so they were like, I had my I had my reels ready. I had my resume. I'm like ready to fight for this to get in here. And the first question he asked was, like, "Do you own any pins?" And I was like, "Oh, like we're going there, first." And I was like, "Well, I don't own any now, but I've owned 3, whatever." We bonded over some 80s machines, and then I got the gig, and I realized then that Jersey Jack definitely wants people that love the craft. They want people that love pinball, not just people that can do the job and move on, because those are the people who love it are the people that have like cool ideas, they have suggestions, they have things they've always wanted to see in a machine. So that's how I got the gig. I got it through Mark and Metroid. Um, so it was really just a situation where I fell into working on a homebrew a little bit, and then ended up doing the real thing. And let me tell you, there are a lot of amazing homebrews out there. The number that'll be at Expo is probably insane, but people are building their own machines, coils, flippers, software, screen. So hey, you talk about, and some of them that I've heard are very minimal on the audio side. They'll put some stuff in, but that's not what really their focus. They're trying to get a machine that flips well. So if you're wanting to do music for pinball, there's opportunity. Consider it the indie space for
Wow.
pinball, right? I mean, like, there's probably maybe there's a rock focused, or kind of a fun actiony pin out there that would at least be worth kind of like, offering, throwing some tracks in just to kind of see what it's like, get used to what the process looks like. And I mean, The audio doesn't isn't a huge priority for homebrews because why would it be? And a lot of these guys are not audio people, right? But the software is there to support it. Um, but that's how I fell into it.
That's
And then I and
incredible.
yeah, and then it was just a matter of delivering. It was like I mean, James Horner's Avatar soundtrack is a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
And you know, how are we gonna do this? So and it happened. We pulled it off.
Dude, and it just goes from, like, one thing to the other, right? You had the idea, "Let's start a Metroid band in 2003,"
Yes,
and then you put yourself
100%.
out there. I think that's, an element that I think I need to start embracing more myself, because I'll write a track or something, and, so one of the things I'm very insecure about is I don't really know how to mix, like, at all. That's not one of my skill sets. It's never been one of my skill sets. I've always sent it out for mix and mastering any of my songs. And so I go, this isn't ready yet. So I can't once I get the money to mix it, then I'll release it. And you know, I feel like now I feel so differently. I feel like, well, this isn't done, but it does sound pretty cool and there's some good ideas. And that it almost reminds me of someone building a pinball machine. They're doing it right in front of you, and they're not showing you the finished product. They're showing you this process,
Right.
and maybe I need to start embracing showing the process a bit more instead of like a finished product. Um,
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah. I think yeah, I mean, putting stuff out there I think is important. A lot of people they stop themselves from doing that. It's never going to be perfect. Even after it's released, it's not going to be perfect, but it is important to get that to kind of get stuff out so it's discoverable and you have something to share and you're never going to go back to it if you abandon it, right? Like just because you're thinking about something else or software changes or you lose your session or whatever. So at least yeah, I think it's definitely important to put that out there and you have no idea what some of that can lead to, you know? It happens when you least expect it, but at least you do have to get used to putting art out in the world. If you're not comfortable putting it out uh, randomly, then you're just going to be even more nervous when it's time to deliver on a project that isn't yours.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so did they give you a list of songs that you have to make? Like, you need to make a multi-ball song, you need to make like a normal play song and a theme, or did you happen to
Mhm.
make like a bunch of songs and they happen to find what fits in there? I reckon it's the former.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So we knew we wanted to incorporate the Avatar movie doesn't have character themes, which actually kind of I expected.
Mm,
When I went back to it, I was sort of thinking space opera, but it really is more. There are some themes that relate to certain things, but it's mostly a lot of it is James Horner's um, one with the people main there's a main Avatar motif which we licensed to write all this music so his that song is I recreated it. This was the first experiment, was recreating that song to the note, to mix wise, all the
mhm.
harp. I need by ear. I'm recreating this theme song, building a template that I can start with, and then sort of spinning off from there to write the rest of the music. I use this as the foundation, and then it really was like that. It's like we need main play music. We need songs for all these different modes. There's like 22 main modes, 9 shot modes or Savako modes. Obviously need multi-ball music, and then you need fanfares, they call them. So if you need fanfares for your jackpots, you need your ball lock, you need your extra ball, you need all this other stuff. So there was a list. It was like here, and here's thematically what they all are. So they were working on modes and then trying to figure out, um, make sure they knew exactly which scenes from the film they would take place in. Was it learning to dive? Was it about swimming and learning to swim with these animals in the second film, or is it like um is it the child abduction sequence in the woods at night with fire and tear gas? Like,
Right.
so you got to know, so you know what kind of energy you're working with, right? Is it multi-ball, or are you literally just walking through the bioluminescent forest at night, right? Like, there's two different vibes there. So, um, So yeah, I had a list, and I just sort of had to work down it. And I tried to go in like priority order, what was being done first, so we could hear some stuff. And then sound effects went along with that too. Had to figure out what the sound sounded like for all the shots and the spinner and all that. So they're really good about giving me sort of a list of here are the assets we need.
Mhm.
Everything needs to be able to loop nicely and flow in and out of each other and stuff like that.
So how far into the process were they already in by the time you got involved? Was it super early on? Did you get to see what the board or the field looked like? Or did they kind of say, "Hey, we're making a pinball machine, make these type of songs?"
By the time I got involved, there was a completely designed playfield that
Oh.
I could look at. There was um, the art was almost done for the playfield.
Mm,
It was in process, and lots of things changed on the playfield in terms of the way things were built, like the mechanics of the little scramp that pops up and things like that. But the playfield was pretty much done. The shots were pretty much done, and it was time to look into getting some audio. So I wasn't there from the very beginning, and it makes sense. I mean, it takes a while to design a machine and start to figure out exactly if the machine isn't designed, they don't know what sound they need.
right.
So I was a little later on in the process.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
That
not super far. I mean, it takes a long time to make one of these things, um, but yeah, by the time I got in there, I was able to see exactly what the playfield was gonna look like.
that's really cool. Because for
Yeah.
me, when I want to write something, I definitely like to draw inspiration. I like to dive into whatever I'm doing as much as I possibly can. So to have visuals, I would try to match that vibe as much as possible, which I think you did very, very well. I feel
Thank
like
you.
the art, the lights, the field, and the music all go together perfectly. Like this, I feel like Avatar would be a perfect pen to own because it's the type of thing I would show my friends because it would be just so cool. Like you don't even have to like pinball, I don't think. It's just you just see all these cool things happening all at once and it's I don't know, it's like experiencing a live concert, like a Pink Floyd light show right in front of you.
Yeah,
Um and it comes
yeah,
with every element that you could want. A game,
yeah.
visuals, and you get to hear everything. So that's
Yeah, the Avatar, people don't think about Avatar every day because there's only been 2 movies and they've been, like, 13 years apart. It's not like Star Wars where you're getting bombarded with the new season of something every other month, but most people have seen the film and most people would agree that it is a vibe, you know what I mean?
mhm,
And granted, it does have a lot. I mean, there's a lot of there's the nighttime stuff, there's the eclipse stuff, there's all and and then there's the battles and machines and destruction. It's got the whole Hollywood package in there.
mhm.
But it's a vibe. It's definitely a vibe, and I feel like they did a really good job capturing the vibe. And I tried to do my part too. One of the hard things in writing music for games or for this is writing a piece of music that is interesting but isn't distracting and doesn't get old.
Yeah.
Um, I tend to lean real hard into melodic stuff, but I really try to dial that back for something like this, just to kind of you want to put someone somewhere, but
Mhm.
you don't want them to just sit there listening to the music constantly, unless they are supposed to, unless it's multi-ball and you
Yeah.
want to hit them in the face a little bit. But you need to be able to. You hear that main play music so much in these games when you first plunge or you come out of a mode.
Mhm.
It needed to be. Um, it needed to not get old. And one of the things we did, and I don't think anyone's going to notice, even though it's a huge thing, the music for ball one, the music for ball two, and the music for ball three are all different. They're in different keys. So when you finish, when you drain out of ball one, when the music kicks on for ball two, it's up a whole step, right, musically, and it's slightly faster than it was, and there's a slightly different melody that plays. And if you drain out from that and you get ball three, it goes up a whole step again, and then you're in this extra, and then the Horner section at the end is the drums drop out and it's way more choir focused. So it's like I was realizing how much we were hearing the main play music, and I was like, well, I'll just make it so every single ball has a slightly different version, so it's familiar, but it does change things a little bit, so you feel like you're sort of progressing through the game.
Dude,
But
that's
you would never
insane.
know unless you're a total music person that I've done that. But if you listen to each track, you'll notice that they're in different keys and they are slightly different because whatever, you're on a journey. It needs to change a little bit. Uh, Stuff
And
like that. Anyway,
like changing keys, right? It usually signifies something happening. And yeah,
yes,
ball two, you lost the
yeah,
ball. We got to make stuff happen, man. I mean, you're
yeah,
cool, and then a key raises again. Oh, now you
yeah,
got to make something happen. So
yeah. Right.
it's cool that
Like we're
you're
moving on. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. But you lost your ball. You need to now. Come on. Like,
grow up.
oh, you lost another ball. I guess we'll, stop the song. We got to change the keys again for this guy. I
Yeah.
don't. What's the problem?
Yeah, I
I don't know.
I think
Anyway.
that's part of storytelling though. And definitely for me, whenever I write a song, even if it's instrumental, and that's probably how you got into what you do, is you're trying to say something, and you can signal that through key changes, tempo changes, you know, rhythm changes, whatever it may be. Distortion comes in, feels
Yeah.
more
Right.
intense, and
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna have to definitely go back
You
and play.
just think about it, when you drain, like, think of a pitch and you're a musician, so you'll probably pick on it immediately, but then when you hear the next ball come up, you'll only "Oh, we're up a little bit." And there's another thing we did that the guys were okay with. They coded this from scratch because this is you do this in games a lot where as you progress through something or you do something, an extra layer of music will kick on. So the
Mm.
music evolves. I don't know. It goes all the way back to you call them the Yoshi drums, but you jump on Yoshi's back in Super Mario World and the drums kick on, and you hop off Yoshi, the drums go away. It's that whole thing.
Yeah.
So in the game, every mode, not the shot modes, but the regular song chord modes, the music starts at a base layer normally without a lot of percussion or anything. And then as you score points and go through the mode, there are three versions of the mode music, and it seamlessly transitions into the different tiers. So the energy picks up over the course of a mode. Again, it's so seamless that you may not notice it, but there are ones like there's like Viper Wolves or whatever where there's almost nothing when you first start, but by the end of it, there's like drums pumping and stuff, and it's the same thing. You're on a journey, um, but you want it to be transparent. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You want people to feel like they're progressing. You don't necessarily want to be like, "Hey, the drums came in.
Yeah.
Here's the guitar solo." Uh, you know, but the game could use more guitar solos, right?
I was about to say, I felt that's the
Where's
only
the guitar
complaint I
solos?
have. Yeah, is it
Yeah,
could a lack of guitar solo. Yeah.
yeah. Oh well.
um, so do you think that video game composition and pinball composition kind of are adjacent to each other, or does it feel like a completely different skill set that you needed to develop?
I think they're pretty dead on. I
Mm,
think that I think the feature set for like video games have all this middleware software you can use like Fmod or Wise. You've probably seen the names when you boot the games, but like those are pieces of software you can use to have the audio do really wild things, um, blending or transitions or things to be in time with the music, quantization. You can quantize in a game. Like there's all kinds of stuff that games are not built to do, and pinball isn't there yet, right? Like pinball is really fleshed out in terms of the quality of the music, the fidelity. But it's not as complex as what you can do in games. But it is right. It's the same kind of idea. It's about music and sound effects and sound design. One of the big differences is that you talked about the headphones and you guy mixing the records and checking headphones and you check your car, you check your earbuds, you put your crappy speakers on, you check the mixes in all these places.
mhm.
With pinball, there's really only one speaker set you're ever going to use, and that's the one that's in the cabinet, right?
Yeah.
So that's different because you're using that as your reference
Right.
as opposed to a million different. Now people are always going to put headphones on. There are headphone jacks in the front of the machines, and you can plug your headphones in. And we can't control what headphones people use, but when it comes to speakers, it's pretty much what's in the box. Um, so in games, there's 5.1 and all that stuff. Uh, but as far as making the music goes, I mean, I think it's just very, very similar. I think it may be less complicated because you're not dealing with as many like features
Mhm.
and stuff like that. It'd be great to have quantized spinner sounds with the music,
Oh,
like
man.
like things like that, and layers and musical transitions, and but it'll get there. It'll certainly get there, but yeah, it's very, very, very similar, um, to games, for
Y
sure.
yeah, I can while you were talking about it, it just started to click of, like, the all the similarities and those minute differences, and, that's really cool because I would so for me, one day I'd love to compose for a fighting game. That's, like,
Mm.
specifically something I would love to do, like a Street Fighter or a platform fighter like Smash or something like that. It's definitely part of my musical identity, and, yeah, I so to know that they're both adjacent, that'd be so cool to do either or, you know what I mean? I'd be
Yeah,
down for
totally.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you can do I mean, you can put any song in a pinball machine, just like you can put any song in a game.
Yeah,
Um, uh, yeah, so and the so they're really they go hand in hand, for sure.
that's so sick. Um, what was it like to find the musical identity for the, pinball soundtrack? Was it doing research, like watching the movies or putting yourself in that world of Pandora, or did you just sit down and, like, listen to the soundtrack, like, on Spotify? Um, what was your process like?
Everything you just said, watching the movies over and over again,
Okay.
and listening to the soundtracks over and over again, Horner did the soundtrack for the first movie. Simon Franklin did the soundtrack for the second movie. They're both very, very good. Um, and then deciding what they were doing, like
Mhm.
what kind of chord changes are they doing here? What kind of instrumentation are they using? How are they creating? What is the vibe they create for? Um, the more important scenes in the film. And we're not just pulling music from the movie and putting it in this game, we're writing new music. So doing not aping that or copying, but just trying to figure out what the vibes were like and then going from there to write what I thought might make sense for our version of that for this game. And then um it was a little trial and error for some stuff. And Disney never rejected outright anything that I did, which is amazing. But they had a lot of constructive feedback. They were like, "Keep going, but South
Mm.
American flutes,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Like more vocalizations, maybe in this song, maybe not in this one. I don't know." And then they would push back and say, "The banshee flying music, it doesn't feel very whimsical or heroic. Uh, it sounds a little darker than it needs to be. It sounds epic, but it sounds like." And so I was like, okay. I mean, I agree with that. I get it. That makes sense. So I went and changed the song to major scale,
Mhm.
and it got approved. It was that simple. It was still flying music. It just went darker to light. It went to lighter. It went way more uplifting, and then it ended up getting through. So it's like they had really good feedback to kind of steer my direction. But most of it wasn't really a problem. There were a couple things I tried that were a little off the wall. I have a break beat in one of the modes at the final stage. It's this really weird um, sort of upsetting nighttime battle sequence, and then during the last part of that mode, this drum beat kicks in, this like double time drum beat kicks in, which I thought sounded cool. Mark liked it, and we're like, okay, let's see what happens, and they approved it, and then we moved on. So uh, again, like I need to make it sound like this film, but I also want to inject weird stuff in there too. But really, it was just trying to understand, drowning myself in the music of Avatar to understand kind of what these different moments feel like, and then sort of almost rescoring it in a way, doing something that I felt fit um, those areas. And I really wanted to get trippy and spacey for their underwater stuff. There's also like an eclipse mode, an eclipse thing in this game. And I wanted to get spacier with the eclipse. I wanted to get like out off planet, for like
Mhm.
more cosmic with the eclipse stuff, which isn't something that you really hear in the films. Um, like there's a whole version of the when you're playing the game in main play,
Mhm.
when you hit eclipse or when you enable eclipse, the same track plays, but all the drums are gone, and all of a sudden there's all this floaty string stuff that plays. It's still the same track, but it's just like the eclipse version of that track, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Um, so that was sort of the adventure, trying
That's
to figure this out.
I love hearing that type of stuff, man. It reminds me of when I used to write for my band. We were in like a pretty techy kind of prog band. So what we would do is the first verse would go a certain way, and the mentality would be like, well, like I was telling you earlier, it was like nerd metal, but I also would call it ADHD metal. So we would not necessarily want to play the verse the same exact way the second time around. So potentially we would go full time, we would go half time if it was full time. We would potentially change the key, or modulate the rhythms if we had to. So I love how you take an idea like a foundation, like a theme, and then you can take something away or add something on there, and it gives it a completely different feel, and it sounds new and appropriate for what you're trying to do. So I think that's so sick. I love
Cool.
doing stuff like that.
It was also fun taking the main melody of Avatar. It's basically da 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 da, taking that and shoehorning it in everywhere, like in
Yeah,
minor, in like the weirdest places, really slow, like figuring out where we could stick it in for connective tissue.
yeah,
You get bits of that in the movie, but you don't get that as much. Uh, you get a bit of it in the movie, but we do it even more in the game, I think.
yeah,
But uh, but it was fun. It was neat. It was challenging.
yeah.
Um, but didn't hit any real roadblocks. I just had to keep working on it, you know.
Disney surprisingly chill. That I was
Surprisingly chill.
shocked, but that's so
Yeah.
cool. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
they pushed back on everything that was appropriate to push back on. They're very
mhm,
protective of the Avatar lore. Lots and lots of art feedback, really really specific things. Lots of details on the playfield, things relating to arrowheads, like stuff that was very important for Avatar. It has to be right. I think with music, it also has to be right. But they also, as far as genre goes, there are a variety of like Avatar adjacent pop songs that came out alongside the films in the
mhm.
credits. So it seems like they're okay with genre bending a little bit there. And luckily that's my department. That's nice.
Yeah.
So, so they were okay with things like that. And I think that's cool. It's interesting to see where the IP holders will flex for stuff for the sake of a different medium like pinball. This isn't the movies. This is pinball. And I've worked with other companies where it was an absolute nightmare to get anything approved at
Right.
all. And they won't tell you why. They'll just say it's not right, and then you keep going and you spin wheels. And it wasn't like that here. So that was great.
That is so sick. Because I like to think that it's a collaboration, and I know you're kind of maybe collaborating with some giant corporate conglomerate. So you're like, you're not sure how it's going to work out, but there's surprisingly a good amount of communication. And I feel like in your industry, you probably have to be coachable, right? Or, be able to not have like this mentality of this is my masterwork. I can't bend, it has
Yes.
to go this way. And yeah, you seem like you're easy to work with, and you will take criticism because it doesn't mean what you wrote was bad. It just means it's not necessarily what they're looking for in that particular
Exactly.
mode.
Some people can't handle that, and it took me a long time to handle the feedback. I'll still feel like I wrote something great and send it to someone, and they're like, "It isn't right," and
Mm.
I'm like, "I'm not gonna say you're wrong. Uh, you're probably right, but
Mm.
I just think you're wrong. But I'm gonna go back and change because that's what it has to be." I've gotten more and more used to that over the years, and let me tell you, you do enough of those, you will eventually work with someone that gives you direction that just makes your music better.
Wow.
Like a director that will be like, here's how this is making me feel, but I should feel like this instead, or make a recommendation, and they're not even a musician, and you do it, and you're like, wow, like I actually learned something that will change the music I make going forward. So for every numbskull that doesn't know anything about music and doesn't know how to give feedback correctly, there's someone else that helps make what you do better. So you just have to get through the bad ones to get lucky enough to work with the good ones.
I'm just imagining somebody from Disney sending you a voice note of them singing how it should go. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
hey, wouldn't be the first time.
No way. No
Yeah,
way, dude. That's
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
Ah.
yeah. I feel like there's some directors that really know how to communicate, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I've had guys tell me the weirdest or their mouth drum stuff, or they'll talk about colors,
Mm.
sort of a synesthesia thing,
Yeah.
and I can understand some of that stuff.
Mhm.
But then you got directors who are just trying to sound like they know what they're suggesting, and they're just trying
Right.
to use because other people are watching, and they're saying things that are artful but mean absolutely nothing. And then you might you might slide one note up and send it back, and they're like approved. It's weird. It's strange. It's a mess.
You
But yeah,
know,
working yeah,
may
it's ugh.
maybe they're trying to justify their job as a producer. They're like, "Look, if I don't give a note here, I might, get fired." So, you add
Yes,
that one little change, it's like, "That was my idea," you know?
yes. What would you say you do here? It's
Yeah.
like I communicate between these people and these people. That's what I do.
So,
Yeah.
what would be an IP for a pinball machine that you would like to do? And it could be one that's already done.
Mm.
So if they like went and
Oh,
remastered it, I don't, I'm not going to gatekeep what your dreams are because anything's possible in the world of pinball.
yeah.
So if there's an IP that
Gosh.
you want to do or one that hasn't been done, I can tell you mine if you need time to think.
Well, what are we asking here? Are we talking about the theme we want in pinball? Or are we talking about the theme that I want to make music for in pinball? Because those are probably different things. I don't actually know.
Actually, they're different for
Uh,
me too. So
well, what were you asking?
so what would you like to compose music
Oh
for
yeah.
any IP?
Hmm. Oh, any IP?
Yeah, any IP or any pinball machine. If there's like if you want to remake Junkyard or something like
Yeah,
that, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
gatekeep that. That'd be cool.
I would love to do like a sci-fi machine. I would love
Mhm.
to do like I love Blade Runner. I love the
Oh,
aesthetic of that. I feel like that would fit really well in a pin.
that'd be
That'd be fun to
great.
write music for. I really want to do a sci-fi film and a horror film. And so
Mhm.
either of those for pinball would be amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be good.
uh, and then there's just the pinball tables I want to see. Like
Mhm.
I want a Tron, but I want it to be the 1982 Tron, like the
Right.
Wendy Carlos soundtrack, which is what I grew up with. I had a whole Tron cover album of Wendy Carlos's music. I'm the biggest Tron junkie. I got my Metroid tattoo here, but I might have to get my light cycle over here one day. Like Tron is my jam. I don't know. Let's see. I would love to write. Gosh, I guess it depends on the theme. Because here's the thing: is so many. You talk about what IP would you want to work with. I feel like it's unfortunate for the lack of original IP pinball machines we see these
I
days.
completely agree.
Um, I get why they do it because they have to sell and they're very expensive to manufacture and they're very expensive to buy. Um, but like I'm really interested in this Ninja Eclipse game that this Turner Pinball is making, only because it's a brand new machine that doesn't have an IP associated with it that looks kind of rad. It looks kind of like a comic like a comic book slash video game, Mark of the Ninja style game, which was one of my favorite games. And I'm just love the fact someone's doing that. So like for me, I want to write like rad shmup music, like like Gradius style. I don't know, like rock and or like a fighting game pin, right?
That's the
Like an
dream.
original fighting game pin where the characters were designed by the artists you love that worked on, King of Fighters and everything else. I just like so like when I work on an IP, I'm gonna be rewriting or like utilizing music from that IP. Um, I could happily do that, but I love the idea of something original too. So I'm kind of caught. You know what I mean?
I completely
I'm
understand because
trying to figure it out.
my girlfriend and I, we have a list of themes that we've noticed haven't been made yet for pinball, like original type
Uh-huh.
things. Like one example I'll give away is she really wants to see like an 80s mall theme pinball machine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
like I think that would be so fun and like you would go to like different stores to go buy different stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I
100%.
heavily believe that pinball does not market towards women enough. I think they could do a little bit more in like picking IP. You know, my girlfriend's always saying like, "Man, why don't they have like a Powerpuff Girl pinball machine? Why don't they have like, they have Dolly Parton and they have things that maybe appeal to everybody, but there's always another Pulp Fiction or something like that. That's really
Yeah.
great, and I love that pin. But I think it'd be so rad if the girlies could have one. You know what I mean for themselves.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a male-dominated industry for as long as it's existed. That's changed a bit. I love the fact that with Avatar, I mean, in the tournament scene, you got Bells and Chimes, you got a lot of women
Mm.
players, you got a lot of like women streamers, and for Avatar, we have two women on the team: the lead mechanical engineer,
Oh,
who's also new to pinball, and the artist, Leah Foskey, who did the art for the machine, also first time pinballer and a woman, which is just really fun. It was really fun to know that. And then I'm a first timer, and Mark's a first timer, so we got a bunch of first timers. I'm just some white dude, but you know, but a bunch of first timers on the machine, and two of them are women. And I think that's really exciting for me.
yep,
Um, I think that's rad. I'm with you. I don't. I feel like there's this kind of. I mean, then again, it's who's spending the money on these new in-box games, but
yeah,
you see a lot of rock and roll pins. You see a lot of a lot of superhero stuff. They're trying to go mass market, and I don't know. I guess it depends on what the thought is on what a girly pin would be. I feel like a Barbie or a Taylor Swift pin would
huge,
destroy if
huge.
done by the right company. Um, stuff like that. I think you're absolutely right. Here you go. The mall. Check this out on your mall table, your
Okay,
80s mall table. It's all like, it's the purple grid. It's kind of the retro Trapper Keeper look, 80s experience, right?
yep.
But halfway through the game, we run into zombie problems in the mall, right?
Oh, nice.
So you're shopping, you're building your haul, right? You might go to groceries or whatever, and then at a certain point, all of a sudden things go wrong, and it's about hiding in the stores, right?
Yeah,
Or like
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
love
I'm just
that.
trying.
No, I
I'm a
love
Dawn
that.
of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead is my favorite movie, and so the mall thing, I just feel like, and then all because all the lighting could change and the graphics could change, and
Yeah.
then it could be about like, off the groceries you got, you use that for survival. I don't know.
I
It's
love
just
that
silly.
mix of, like, sweet, like the mall, like you're literally getting a pretzel and that's chill, and then eventually, if you get far enough in the game, all of a sudden you're screwed, and,
Yeah.
like, you have to survive. I love that
It-
idea. I'm
I
definitely gonna
mean, but the
pitch that to
music would be
her.
fun. It would be like
Yeah.
80s horror, 80s horror movie music. Synthwave style.
Yeah.
The music doesn't even change that much. But anyway,
Yeah, I think, especially if you're gonna make, like, an original pin, you should probably have something sexy to go along with that, as in, like, some kinda gimmick or some kind of thing to pull you in. So, zombies, I mean, I'd be down for that. There's not enough zombie pins, so I think that'd be really cool.
actually, that's really surprising, actually. But yeah,
Yeah,
lack
there's, like,
of
Walking
lack of
Dead,
zombie bands. Yeah, just
and
Walking Dead.
I can't even think of another one, but, if I got to art direct one pin, alright, here's my pitch. I wanna do SpongeBob so bad.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
surprised that hasn't happened yet.
dude, I'm kinda glad it hasn't, because that means there's time for me to do it. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, I am so worried that if somebody made a SpongeBob machine, there's a machine I can see in my head that I'd be like, "All right, everybody expected this." It'd be like the art that has been the late 2010s, like, and that would be cool. Like, I would love to see, but I have a vision. I'm telling you. Like, imagine you're playing an aquarium, right? So all the cheap little toys that's in an aquarium, and you just put that in the machine, and you get that vibe of like, oh, like I could see my fish living in this pen. That's step one. That's if Stern has that IP, I'm ready to pitch it like today. I would not do the soundtrack, I don't think, though, because if I was art directing, I would be pretty busy. But I could maybe do it because I do love to play ukulele. But I would do it. I would do it. I would put
Yeah,
my entire soul into it. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, that's something I would dedicate my life to, for sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much homebrew right now. There's a more recent Pokemon machine that blows my
I
mind.
saw that. That looks so
Um,
cool.
there's so many. There's a Tony Hawk one that looks insane. That's supposed to be at Expo this week, which I'm excited about.
I would
Um,
destroy making that sound. I would do the pop punkiest
oh yeah,
soundtrack
totally. Yeah,
ever.
yep, yep, absolutely. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a homebrew opportunity for SpongeBob. If it's not in the zeitgeist at the moment, we may not get a full pin out of it. But who knows?
Oh, it's happening,
Who
and I'm
knows?
gonna make it happen.
There you go. I like it.
uh, all right, man. I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been so generous in giving me this time, and just giving someone who's like a little kid just wanting to know everything. and I feel like I got so much, and this has definitely been like I bet a lot of people are very curious about what you do, and want to do what you do, but they're not sure if they can break in, or if there's a process, or if there's some gate being kept. And it sounds like you are a perfect example of someone who just took a chance out, put themselves out there, and believed in themselves, and made something very cool. So congratulations on Avatar, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I would encourage anyone to, if you're an artist or you're doing stuff, put that stuff out. Like, let people see it. Be in the world because someone needs you to work with them. I mean, there are aspiring artists, visual artists, aspiring mechanical people, software people, like, all the people that work in this hobby or are interested in this hobby. They're all out there and they need to come together to make art together. And that's how I fell into this. And that's how, and yeah, I mean, like you said, yeah, putting my stuff out there, building relationships, talking to people, being easy to work with, um, is key. And then things happen.
Yeah.
You gotta work hard,
Mhm.
but things happen. So uh, yeah,
All
it's
right.
great talking to you, man.
Well, it's wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. And
Mr. Maneuver
yeah,
in the flesh.
Stemage himself. Uh,
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your next pin soundtrack, and I will be keeping in touch, and I will have all of your information in the description below. If you want to check out any of the stuff, do you have anything in particular that you would like to plug?
Oh, a brand new thing just dropped yesterday. I'm doing a soundtrack for a DC cartoon. Uh,
Dude.
it's called DC Heroes United. It is ex Telltale people, a company called Genvid working on it. And so it's basically you watch the show. It's on Tubi. It's free because the whole experience should be free. They're not paywalling with one of the other services. You
Mhm.
watch the show and there's choices at the end of the show and there's a companion game. It's like a
What?
Vampire Survivors-esque game. You play the game and then you can vote on the choices for the following week on what the characters do, and the choices made by the community dictate the canon for the season of the show. So there's a trailer on YouTube. This just finally got announced yesterday, and I'm scoring the show. I'm not doing sound effects, but I am scoring the show and the
Dude,
game
what?
comes with it.
That's
Yeah, I
so
know,
sick.
dude. It's crazy, and
What
it's gonna kill me. It's
the
good. This is the last time anyone's gonna see me because the show is going to kill me. But it's great, and it's really cool, and what a great idea for a show. It should be really really neat. I have no questions to answer, but the trailer is on YouTube.
Okay.
Um,
I'll link that
but
too.
yeah, oh yeah, it's on this. Oh yeah, you should check it out. I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah,
But it should be
please.
fun.
I wanna check it out. It'll be a perfect companion piece because 'cause I'm not caught up on the Penguin. So I'll watch that and then the
Yes, I'm
Penguin.
not either. I'm not either.
Dude!
I hear
Yeah.
it's incredible, and I've been so busy.
Yeah.
I was out of town this past weekend. I'm going to Pinball Expo this weekend, and when I'm back, it's Penguin Expo. You feel me?
Yeah.
You with me?
You're just living life, bro. You're just being a
We're doing
guy.
it.
Yeah.
Peng You're right. Penguin Expo next week.
All right.
Join me.
I can't wait
All
to
right.
hear more from you, all right?
All right.
All
Take
right.
care.